Hello, my name is Jennifer Love, and I am the House Representative for Kirkland House.
And my name is Nick Neuer. I'm one of the senior gift co-chairs and a proud resident of Mather House.
And we are delighted to introduce our Class Day speaker, Matt Lauer. Matt Lauer's role as co-host of NBC's The Today Show is one that requires a balance between both critical and comical newscasting. A graduate of Ohio University, Matt's 20 years in broadcasting have made him a globally recognizable figure who tackles interviews with international figureheads and serves as host to large-scale events such as the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. As the Today Show's co-anchor for the past 12 years, Lauer has been at the edge of watershed events. He has interviewed political giants such as Hillary Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama, and has broadcast live from countless exotic locations in his well-known segment, Where in the World is Matt Lauer? While on Today, Matt has also come in contact with a number of cultural icons, like Prince William, Michael Phelps, Sarah Palin, and even Britney Spears. Oddly, though, despite such a wide array of locations and guests, Matt has never broadcast from dear old Harvard. Nick, do you think Matt is unaware of how truly exotic we Harvard students can be? I mean, don't you think we share a striking number of similarities with Britney Spears?
Perhaps, Jen, but I think this may have less to do with Harvard lacking an exotic flair and maybe more about our intimidation factor. Matt recently told talk show host Jimmy Fallon that he was a little nervous to be speaking at Harvard. Really, Matt? I think you've dealt with many things that are more frightening than us Harvard students. An aggressive Tom Cruise defending Scientology seems slightly more intimidating than Reverend Gomes. And what about that deer that ran into you while you were cycling, Matt? Wasn't he scarier? To be honest, I rarely see a Harvard student tackle any cyclists. And surely Ann Coulter is far more frightening than the 7-member Harvard Republican Club. So we hope that today has shown you that there's actually nothing to be afraid of, and we're actually quite friendly and a lot of fun. And who knows, one day you may even be interviewing a member of our class. But please, go easy on us. We may still be recovering from senior week. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our pleasure to introduce the Harvard College Class of 2009 Class Day speaker, Mr. Matt Lauer.
Thank you very much. Nick and Jen, thank you. Dean Hammonds, it's great to be with you. Members of the faculty, administration, family members, guests, and most importantly, members of the graduating class of 2009. This is a kick. You've got your digital cameras. Send me them on email, those photos. I'm going to need proof of this down the road. You have to understand how surreal this is for me to be speaking at Harvard. And to understand that, I think you have to go all the way back to my junior year in high school, 1974. You don't have to gasp. I didn't say, not 1874, 1974. And I walk into my guidance counselor's office for that meeting where you decide what colleges you're going to apply to. And after laying out the schools that I thought were kind of in my power alley, I said to him with an earnest voice, I said, and I think as a stretch, I may apply to Harvard. Silence. You could hear crickets in the room. And he said, Mr. Lauer, what makes you think that a student of your caliber should apply to Harvard? Well, even back then, I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, and I said, well, let's start with my SATs, shall we? I got 780 in verbal, 800 in math. And he started to thumb through my file on his desk, and he looked back and he took off his glasses and he said, Mr. Lauer, you do not get to add up the scores from all 3 times you took the SAT. All right, good to know, right? And then he said the words that would send me on my course in life, or at least my course to Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. He said, Mr. Lauer, you applying to Harvard would be the biggest waste of $15 in the history of $15. Now, if I told you it didn't make me a little mad. But I would also be lying to you if I told you he wasn't right. So I stand here now some 35 years later, and unless Ashton Kutcher jumps up from one row in the next 30 seconds and says, "Lauer, you've been punked," I think this will be the sweetest and most unlikely come-from-behind victory since a baseball went through Bill Buckner's legs in 1986. Don't give me the booze. You're over that by now. Let me give you a little background on how this invitation came about, because looking out here, I'm pretty sure none of you got to vote on this. My executive producer, the executive producer of the Today Show, Jim Bell, Harvard class of '89, came to me about 4 months ago. And by the way, don't do that, okay? Don't introduce yourself like he does. Jim Bell, Harvard class of '89. This is my first piece of graduation advice. That is a really good way to get a fat lip. Just because you went to a great school, you did not win an Academy Award, you will not be introduced for the rest of your lives as Oscar winner Joe Blow, Harvard class of 2009. So he comes to me and he says, "Matt, I've been asked to invite you to be the class day speaker at Harvard this spring." I was flattered. But I immediately asked the question that any graduate of Ohio University would ask. I said, "Do I get an honorary degree?" I said, "Do I get a doctorate?" He said, "No." I said, "Do I get a cap, a gown, a sash, anything I can sell on eBay?" He said, "No." And you know what? I accepted it anyway. But immediately after I accepted the invitation, I had second thoughts. And the reason is this is a daunting task. You are, whether you know it or not, an intimidating group. Take a good look around you. Look around you. All right, as a group, you don't look like much. But there are some future world changers in this audience. So obviously, anyone who does what I'm doing right now has to wonder whether they can live up to expectations. So I had these second thoughts. I called my executive producer back, and he answered the phone. Jim Bell, Harvard class of '89. He can be a real ass. And I said, "Jim, give me an idea. Who are some of the other people who have spoken at class days over the years?" And he said, "Oh, Rodney Dangerfield, George Plimpton, Tom Brokaw, and Jane Pauley." I said, "Well, Dangerfield got no respect. George Plimpton went around the world doing weird things, writing about it or talking about it on TV. I've made a career out of doing that. Brokaw and Pauley were both Today Show hosts. I'm in my element." So I thought, great. And just as he was about to hang up the phone, he said, "Oh, and Bill Clinton and Mother Teresa." I'm telling you, he can be a real ass. So I thought, all right, if Mother Teresa gave this speech at one time, it gives me the opportunity to give you a little graduation advice using a story that involves Mother Teresa, so bear with me. All right, August 31st, 1997, it was a Sunday. It was also the day that Lady Diana died. The next day, Monday morning on the Today Show, we launched into unprecedented coverage of Lady Diana's life and death. All day Monday, all 2 hours, no other subject, Lady Di. All day Tuesday, all 2 hours, no other subject, Lady Di. All day Wednesday and all day Thursday. Well, at the end of Thursday, we got together and we thought maybe we should start to move back to more regular programming. And so what we decided to do on that Friday, September 5th, was we would do the first hour of the show on Lady Diana, and then we would move to a more regular interview in the second hour. So our first subject or guest who was not directly related to Lady Diana on that Friday morning was the actor Michael Douglas. He was going around to promote his new movie at the time called The Game. So I sat down next to Michael Douglas, and I started to talk to him about his movie. And then toward the end of the interview, I decided maybe we can tie up all the stories of this week. So I said, "Michael, I know that you knew Lady Di, and I'm just curious your response to her death." And he was very articulate, and he said she was a wonderful woman, a great humanitarian. He said, "Matt, but I have to be honest with you. I'm a little bit overwhelmed at the volume of coverage that the networks have dedicated to Lady Di. She was a great lady, but if we spend all this time talking about the life and death of Lady Di, I don't know, what are we going to do when someone like a Mother Teresa dies?" He said that at 8:15 on Eastern Time on Friday, September 5th, at noon Eastern Time on Friday, September 5th, Mother Teresa did something she had never done before. She died. Now, I tell you this because this is my second piece of graduation advice. If Michael Douglas ever mentions your name on national television, lie down quickly. If you have access to one of those children's aspirins, take that and then lie down quickly. As a group, you just laughed at the death of Mother Teresa. If we hurry, we can make the 4:30 shuttle to hell. I tried to think back over the last several months about any and all connections I might have to Harvard, and I thought about this. Not long ago, the executive producers of all three network morning news shows, CBS, ABC, and NBC, were all Harvard graduates, all at the very same time. Now, that may make you proud, it may make you recoil in horror, I don't know. Another connection, Jeff Zucker, I mentioned my executive producer, Jim Bell, Harvard class of '89. Jeff Zucker, Harvard class of '86, started at NBC as a researcher in the Olympics department, went on to become the youngest executive producer of the Today Show in history. He then went on to become the chairman of NBC Universal. He is my Uber boss, which brings me to something else I want to tell you. If you seem to do what is normal around here, and you leave Harvard and you continue up the ladder and you zoom to the top of your chosen profession, I have no desire to work for you. I'm being serious. We can be friends today. I will take pictures with your family members. When we leave here, we are adversaries. We are competing for plum jobs in an ever-shrinking economy. It is survival of the fittest. Now, I realize that puts me at somewhat of a disadvantage, but what I lack in academic pedigree, I make up for in pettiness and aggressiveness. So, if you go off and become the CEO of a major company and in a couple of years I work for that company, I will be your worst nightmare. I will be the 60-year-old disgruntled employee at the water cooler sowing the seeds of discontent. So stay out of my way. I am tired of working for Harvard graduates. Another connection, and this one's weak. The others were kind of weak actually too, but this one's weak. I used to host a television show here in Boston called Talk of the Town. I was 30 years old. I was single at the time, and I'm riding the T one day from downtown out to, I guess, to Brookline. Is that the Green Line still? I'm on the Green Line. I am sitting across from the most stunning young lady I have ever seen in my life. She's wearing cut-off denim jeans, a skin-tight, faded Harvard t-shirt, blonde, beautiful hair. And I'm normally a very shy person, but I'm looking at this girl, and we're getting close to Coolidge Corner, and I'm thinking, if I get to my stop and I don't talk to her, I will never see her again. So uncharacteristically, I got up the nerve, and I walked over to her, and I struck up a conversation. I said, I'm Matt Lauer. I'm hosting a television show in town. I'm new here. Could I possibly have your number, and maybe one day we could have a drink? And she gave it to me. This Harvard girl gave me her number. I went home, I waited the obligatory 2 or 3 hours so as not to be a stalker. And I called her and said, can we have a drink? And she said, how about this weekend? I'm going to visit some friends in Marblehead. We could meet there. Have you ever been to Marblehead? It is one of the most sensational New England seaport towns you'll ever see. It's got beautiful homes around the harbor. It's got restaurants, and out in the distance in the harbor, these red and white little buoy moorings, and there must be 200 or 300 sailboats bobbing gently in the waves. So the next day, I drive to Marblehead in the evening. It's a gorgeous night. The sky is kind of an orange color as the sun is going down. And I walk into this restaurant, and I see her sitting with her back to me. And I try to be suave, and I walk over, and I lean over behind her, and I say, it's stunning, isn't it? As she looked out over this scene. And she turned and she looked at me and said, it's just incredible. But I was just sitting here wondering, who's the guy who decides which direction all the sailboats have to park in? I said, I believe the wind is the guy who decides which direction all the sailboats park in. The Harvard t-shirt had been borrowed. She went to Yale. We dated for about 3.5 years. I told you she was stunning. Now, Stephen Chu, your commencement speaker, is not going to tell you a story like that tomorrow. I can tell you right now. That's right. You got the Secretary of Energy, Stephen Chu, as your speaker tomorrow. Sexy. I'm not trying to offend anybody here, but I'm thinking that unless he gives each and every one of you one of those nitrogen fuel cell cars to keep, you are in for a long afternoon. But Stephen Chu is going to give you some worldly advice, so let me just give you some advice light. Okay, this one comes from my own experiences. Have kids. Have a lot of kids, because when you find it hard to find humor in the world, kids will help you find that humor. They will crack you up or they will kill you, one or the other. But have kids. Recently, I had a chance to interview President Obama 10 days after he took office. NBC asked me on Super Bowl Sunday to do a live interview with the president in the map room at the White House as part of the pregame show. 45 minutes before the kickoff, there would be 40 or 50 million people watching this interview. So I decided I would take my oldest child. I have 3, 7, 5, and 2. I would take my oldest child, Jack, to Washington to meet the new president of the United States. And I got him all dressed up in his suit, and we went to the White House, and we sat down, and the interview began, and I put Jack about 10 feet from the president, just out of the line of the cameras. And as I'm sitting there knowing there are 50 million people watching and President Obama is answering my questions live on television, I was taken by the moment and what I was getting to experience. And I was thinking, no disrespect to the president, I was listening to him, but I was thinking, and I'm experiencing this with my son. And I wanted to steal a glance just to see what he was thinking, watching his father interviewing the most powerful man in the world. And I look over at Jack, 10 feet from the president, and there he is with his finger up his nose. It was priceless. Have a lot of kids. Make sure that you bring at least one, preferably more, but at least one person into your lives who will always look you right in the eye and tell you the truth every single time about the person you're dating, about the outfit you're wearing, about your hair, about your breath. Bring one of those people into your lives, and if possible, try to be that truth teller for someone else that you love. It will help you survive hard times. And try to remember that while it is unfortunate in this crazy country, we are often judged by the trappings we have, the things we surround ourselves with, our houses, our cars, our clothes, and our cash. But you will be defined not by the trimmings, but by your character. I remember vividly in 1989, I was a news junkie, and I was watching an extraordinary event on live television. Jim Wright, then the Speaker of the House of Representatives, forced to resign amid a personal scandal, and he took to the floor of the House of Representatives and he began to speak and say his resignation, and he was surrounded by all of his colleagues. Some of them had turned their back on him, forcing his resignation. And in this extraordinary moment, he quoted Horace Greeley. And what he said was, "Fame is a vapor, popularity an accident. Riches take wing. Those who cheer you today will curse you tomorrow. Character is the only constant." The words stuck with me because I think they're so true. Fame is a vapor, it disappears on a breeze. Popularity is an accident. Who decides who's popular and who's not? Riches take wing. Haven't we all learned that the hard way in these last couple of years? Those who cheer you today will curse you tomorrow. If it hasn't already happened to you, I guarantee you it will. The only thing that remains constant is character. Over these last 20 years, those words have come to my mind so many times, oftentimes to provide comfort, sometimes hitting me like a bucket of cold water in the face. And finally, remember that although you've just spent 4 years and an awful lot of money on the best education money can buy, what you did not get for your money and your effort is entitlement. You did not win the lottery. You did not win the chance to think that you're better than anyone else. This education is a powerful tool, but it is just one of the tools at your disposal. I encourage you to use all your tools. Use your compassion, your kindness, your generosity, your sense of fair play, your sense of humor, to build bridges to the people around you, not to erect barricades. I thought about you all as I was preparing for this speech a couple of weeks ago when President Obama selected Sonia Sotomayor as his choice for the Supreme Court, and in describing why he made that selection, he said he was looking for someone not just with ivory tower learning, but someone with empathy and the personal touch. I encourage you to have empathy, to reach out to the people around you, the people who have not been given the same advantages that you have all been given. Don't take yourselves too seriously. You are young. You can and will make mistakes. Lean on the people around you. Learn from their mistakes and learn from their successes. And continue to learn long after you leave this great university. You are, despite the kidding here, you are the best and the brightest. And this morning, or this afternoon, you are also the object of my enormous jealousy. If I could trade places with you and go back to being 21 years of age, I would trade with you in a second. I would take on the challenges, I would take on the ups, the downs, and the heartaches that you will undoubtedly face in these coming years, and I would try in some small way to change the world. You are the best and the brightest, and I know you will make us proud. All that stuff I said about not wanting to work with you, it was bluster. I would be happy to work with you, and at the very least, I will be standing on the sidelines cheering wildly. You are the best and the brightest. Congratulations, good luck, and God bless you.